Okay, I'm going to get started. There's about 60 folks on the call presently, and I'll let other individuals in as they come along. But I know that a number of us are dealing with power outages and other difficulties today, so I greatly appreciate everyone coming on through that. Obviously, this is our third meeting, so I'm Dr. Sampson, Superintendent of Schools for the Freehold Regional High School District. This is our community forum. This is our third such forum. We had one in mid-June, one in mid-July, and now a third in early August to go through where we are presently with our reopening plans. And I'll go through today some of the things that we're dealing with presently, some of the shifting landscape that we're also dealing with, and then what we are looking toward for the fall. I would just ask the group, pile as many questions as you want to pile into the chat room. There are a number of folks on the call that may be able to provide instant answers into the chat room, and/or we will certainly get back to individuals and embed that into a FAQ that is growing quite massive at this point in time as we add every answer to questions that are posed by multiple folks in our community. Just want to open with a couple thoughts on school reopening in the fall of 2020 and where we are. There are some incredibly strident viewpoints in all communities. And I think that the best video that I've seen addressing those viewpoints, those differences, those stark differences in viewpoints was a pediatrician who posted a video of herself just sort of reflecting on the situation. And she said, whatever decision anyone makes for their family is the best decision. And I think that that is sage advice. I think that every family in our community and in communities across the state has a different context to it, different needs, and I think we need to all recognize that, and certainly do. And what I've been telling folks since June is, as we look to reopen, let's everyone just take a deep breath, take a pause. I think the line that I've been using over and over again, that the hills that we might be fighting over on August 5th aren't even going to exist as hills on August 10th. This is an incredibly shifting and dynamic landscape. The governor changed some things just this week. There are a lot of different pressure points to close schools. There are different pressure points to open schools. And so we are caught in the middle of this. As a superintendent, what I would appreciate from the larger community is folks have really, really strong opinions on both sides of the fence. And rather than, in some ways, maybe being more positive contributors to solving some things, they're very quick to throw roadblocks up on why we can't do something or why we shouldn't think a certain way. And it puts everyone in a really difficult position. And so it's August 5th. We don't open our schools until September 10th. And the whole world could change in that intervening 5 weeks. And so I would just ask everyone to take a pause and understand that this is an absolute fluid situation. And we are working as diligently as possible to make sure that however we open schools in the fall, whatever that looks like, is the most effective experience for our kids, our students, and is the safest experience for our faculty and staff and our students, period, right? And so we have been, I want to just thank my leadership team. It's August 5th. Since our last call on July 15th, it has been night and day here, working toward school reopening. We have tried to earnestly answer every single question from every member of our school community that has come to us. And that is incredibly extensive work. That is hours and hours and days to put those answers in writing, because I want folks to feel comfortable and I want them to understand as clearly as possible exactly what we're doing. And I don't want any questions to go unanswered. This is not the environment to do that. And I know that we all need to feel safe, right? And that's an important construct for our students, for our faculty and staff, and for our larger school community. I do want to just give a little shout out to our executive student cabinet members for 2021 who were just recently selected. They're all on this call as well. Student voice is important in all of this. Our existing executive student cabinet members had been part of the planning process, but they are obviously transitioning to other phases of their lives. And so they're on this call tonight, and I appreciate their time and diligence. And as I said, as we go through the presentation, dump questions into the chat room. This video will be sent to all of the school community. The last one we did on July 15th, last time I looked, had somewhere close to 6,000 views. So our community is really engaged in our updates. I can tell you since July 15th, I've personally met with every health official, every health officer that represents Monmouth County twice. We've had individual calls with our school physicians who are also part of this planning process. We have a meeting set up on Monday with Center State and our school nurses. And so we've tried to incorporate our medical community and our medical experts as much as possible in our planning, because I am not an epidemiologist and I do not have any epidemiologists on my staff. But we do have a lot of medical expertise both on our staff and in the school community who have been more than willing to work with us collectively as we develop our plan. So anything that we've put to paper, we have vetted through those folks as well. I would just a couple updates on where we are in the state presently. So the governor, since the July 15th update, did come out with a all remote option for families. That is something that school district leaders put a lot of pressure on to have that option, because there were a number of folks that were requesting it, and schools did not want to see students withdrawing from their district, dropping from roles and the such, and it was putting families in a really untenable position. And so a number of us, were very active in seeking that specific edict from the governor, and that did come through. So that's something that happened since the July 15th update. Obviously, this week, the Department of Ed released a checklist for districts. When a checklist comes out when plans are due, that's usually not a good thing. So we are working through that as much as possible, but so everybody has a timeline in their heads. The New Jersey Department of Ed released the road back with the 104 pages of guidance and expectations for school districts approximately 5 weeks ago, a little bit more than 5 weeks ago. And the checklist to ensure we were doing what we should be doing within each of those buckets that are outlined in that road back came out 2 days ago. And our plans have been due to the state. So for everybody's edification, district plans are due to the state approximately 30 days before the opening of your school district. And so for us, we have called a special board meeting on August 10th. The plan will be formally adopted at that point in time. It will be sent to the state on August 11th. The county office has to review that it meets the various criteria. It's a review, it's not an approval. The state has been very deliberate in pushing all of the liability and risk right back to the boards of ed and the superintendents. And I want to be clear on that. I'm not going to sugarcoat that in any way. That's what's happening. And so the board does not need to approve the plan as written in the road back guidance. But my Board of Ed here in the Freehold Regional High School District is excellent and has been incredibly involved in this process. And I would never think of pushing a plan forward without their approval. And so they've been incredible stakeholders throughout. And we will look to approve the formal plan on August 10th, which is Monday. And then there will be a significant distribution of information to parents and guardians on August 11th, once that plan becomes solidified. So that's where we are in terms of timeline. One of the major changes from the July 15th as well update to today is that the state has required students to wear masks at all times in a school building, even when they are socially distanced. You've seen that impact a number of plans of districts who've already submitted their plans, so they've had to go back and revise their plans around what that looks like. From our perspective, we're building out schedules in each of the 6 high schools that incorporate mask breaks. Our original schedules were utilizing large spaces to do that. Now we're going to have to pivot and make sure that we can utilize outdoor spaces to make that happen. And so we're presently working through that, as I deliver this update. Not a great situation when the update comes when the plans are due. So we're working through that, and we will get it done. And I don't think that will alter our schedule in any way, other than we've got to be a little bit more flexible and creative in terms of how we utilize the physical spaces in our buildings and outside of our buildings as well. So that plan is being developed. I anticipate more guidance from the governor's office. What I will say to the public and to the members of this committee, I fully expect that guidance to continue to shift. I would not be surprised if we open the school remotely, that the governor is signaling over and over again and putting up some other roadblocks to opening that are going to force a number of districts' hands. I think the worst case scenario for the state to be in is for districts to be allowed to simply decide on their own whether they open or close. It's going to pit community against community. And you're going to have an arbitrary line of a town line, and some kids will be in school and others will not. And it will put all of the onus of what this looks like in terms from a responsibility and liability standpoint directly on the school superintendents and directly on the school district. There are a number of us that are agitating against that. We are asking that if the governor is going to move to a full remote option, that he make that announcement sooner than later so that we can plan appropriately, that districts are not left to twist in the wind to make their own decisions around that, because you are going to disrupt hundreds of thousands of folks if some schools are open, some schools are closed, and what that looks like. Frankly, we need some courageous leadership here in the state, and we need real leadership that isn't punted to our doorsteps under the guise of flexibility. That's what we need, and we've been incredibly vocal about wanting more specific guidance as early as possible if that is the direction that the state is headed, and so stay tuned for that. And again, we're 5 weeks away from when we open, so the entire world can shift again on that. It's an interesting dilemma for us. When we talk to our local medical officials, they tell you that there are very few, if any, COVID patients in the hospitals around us, yet the rate of transmission is high. And there's a lot of arguments and a lot of strong opinions on different data sources. So I'm not going to wade into that minefield whatsoever, other than to say that if the state is going to go in a remote direction, it would be better for everyone if they did it sooner than later. And they should ensure that they're not going to pit district and communities against one another. So we'll see where it lands. But I have also been clear that we really believe that we will be in a hybrid and a remote environment in some capacity in our school district this school year. Whether that is opening up in hybrid and having a positive case that shuts down a particular building and going full remote, or having periodic shutdowns, we're prepared for that. And so my my team has looked at this as making sure that we need to make sure that we are prepared well for both remote and hybrid. And I want to be clear to the community, the folks that are adamantly opposed to a hybrid opening and want remote only, at some point, even if we open remotely, I would doubt that we're going to transition to a full opening. There's going to be a transition period where we're going to live in that hybrid environment no matter what. So we are going to be most likely, and this is my opinion, in both of those environments at some point in the early months of the 2020-2021 school year. That's absolutely how I see it playing out. There are a lot of signs out there right now that districts will ultimately be opening remotely. And again, nothing definitive. Right now, our charge is to open with students in our building. We have a clear plan to do that, which I'm going to go through, and we have a plan that I think is safe. And we'll monitor the next 5 weeks, obviously, and adjust as appropriate to whatever comes our way. Mr. Dillon, if you could move to the next slide. So some of this will be a review, but I just want to go through it and touch on it in a cursory manner, and just remind the members of our community who are going to watch this video at a future date. Hopefully, it'll be out tomorrow. That there are subsequent videos as well to view, so they can have the whole progression of what our plan has looked like, what our line of thinking has been, and where we see ourselves in the fall of 2021. So obviously a pyramid here with three of our primary commitments, health and safety being first, and I'm going to go through where we are with some of those adjustments and plans right now, and the commitment to the whole child, understanding that we're in a global pandemic, we're in a time of significant racial unrest, we're in a time of the country really being divided. If I read one more story about an employee being assaulted for telling somebody to put a mask on, we are in very difficult times here. This is a moment in time that we are moving through. And again, I want to stress the fact that it's a moment in time. Like, we're going to get through this. All of this is temporary. And so with the temporariness of it, we have to do the most effective job that we can do for our students in that time, and understand that there's nothing permanent about this, right? There's nothing permanent about this. And so the final commitment is obviously to the student growth and learning of the children that we're responsible for in the district, and the education that we're responsible for. And we take that very, very seriously. Mr. Dillon, if you go to the health and safety slide, I'll talk through some of the things. And so some of the updates around this, what will the process look like? There will be a daily screening questionnaire for all families that will need to be completed. We're integrating that to our Genesis system. So no student is leaving their home without the family, mom, dad, guardian, having completed that questionnaire, that they're symptom-free. And it's a basic questionnaire that I think most folks have probably seen in some capacity, a version of it by this point in time. When they enter our buildings, and there's been a lot of mixed guidance on the effectiveness of temperature scanners, honestly, we see it as just another layer, and so we're going to do it. So we have pretty massive electronic temperature scanners that can funnel 70 students a minute through them. And we have multiples for every physical structure in this district. And we are going to closely coordinate the movement into the building through those scanners. So you will have the checklist first, you will have the temperature scanner second, and then you will have students entering the room, entering the building. And when they enter the building, we have, since the last call on July 15th, we've doubled our signage in the building in terms of one-way hallways, controlling traffic flow, ensuring that we can maintain our buildings from being crowded in any sense of the word. And I think it's important to note that as of our last survey, and we are going to be surveying again about the remote option, but there were about 19% of our community said that they were going to be full remote. So that leaves us, even when we're looking to divide our students at the 50% marker, that puts us at 40% in the building at any given time. Based on other districts who've released their plans ahead of ours, and again, we were very deliberate in being as late as possible on this. What we've seen over the past week or so is a pretty significant uptick in the number of families that have requested remote only. So we feel that is going to even further dilute the number of students within our halls, right? And that will be coming out with that August 11th communication, that survey. And so we're going to wrap that up by August 18th so that we can plan appropriately. Contact tracing, we'll be working with our health officials across the county. I think it's important to note that they've always contact traced. This is not new to them. The volume of what it has looked like during the COVID crisis might be new, but they're prepared to do that. And we had an hour-and-a-half call with every single health official today in the county, and they reiterated once again that in Monmouth County, they will own the contact tracing for us in that process, and that anything that arises for concern, we're going to coordinate with those health officials, and we will be guided by what they tell us we should be doing. And I think that's important. The signage, I mentioned, we've doubled it since the July 15th. This is one-way hallways, controlling traffic flow and such. Floor decals for folks to understand what 6 feet looks like in a building. Face coverings, masks will be worn at all times. The governor came out and mandated that. We had mandated masks at all times prior to that. So, as I had said earlier, we had hoped for mask breaks within the schedule. But that's not going to be possible inside the large spaces. So we will work, and again, that's all dependent if the governor lifts the mask requirement, and he just obviously yesterday went back to indoor spaces being capped at 25, and I'm sure that caused a lot of consternation for folks out there. We'll see where all that lands, and we'll be prepared to pivot as needed. So we're deploying our custodial crew in a very different way. We're working through cycles to make sure that we have them with more frequent cleaning and sanitizing, and obviously focused on high-touch areas. As I said during the last update, we have made all of our bathrooms and water fountains and the such, they will all be hands-free, so nobody will have the need to touch anything. And then obviously reiterating to families and to students, frequent hand washing. As students enter every single classroom, there will be a hand sanitizer station. They'll sanitize their hands. For every single classroom, there's a huge bucket of EPA and CDC approved wipes. We will ask students to wipe down the surface areas of their desk before they take those seats. We think that that's an important process. We do have PPE for obviously any staff member that wants a face shield in addition to a mask will be provided a face shield. We've purchased all those already. And obviously we'll work within whatever those guidelines are. All the products, there's been an uptick in questions around the use of certain chemicals. And so we're making sure that anything we use is EPA approved. And where necessary, we will provide gloves for students to do that as well. So I also think it's important to talk about the air ventilation. A number of folks have been asking questions about air ventilation. So under normal circumstances in schools, that airflow looks at like a 10% threshold. The guidelines from the CDC under this are 15%. We are working with our engineers and our energy specialists. Every airflow ventilator will be set at 20%, and we're actually washing those out for 2-hour cycles at the end of each day, which will distribute that air 3 different times before someone else enters that building in the morning. So we have really spent a lot of time and a lot of effort making sure that we get the air ventilation right in every one of our rooms. And we've worked with engineers over the past several weeks, and again, our energy specialist to do that. The responsive protocols, we have, we've modified the nursing areas for isolation rooms. There's shifting guidance on what quarantine looks like. Any 14-day quarantine if you believe exposed. We know that from the call with our health officials in the county, we do know that anyone could be asymptomatic, and it takes anywhere between, I believe, 3 and 14 days for the testing to dictate that. So a lot of questions around testing. We've seen a couple districts in the state go to some form of testing, and what we were told is if you're going to test once at the start of the school year, it's useless. We're told if you're not testing regularly and constantly, you're doing it to look good, but it's not going to necessarily make a difference. And so we are not planning to test. We are planning to make sure that we partner with local entities that are offering testing and make sure that we provide that to our students, our staff, our school community members and such, and communicate that as appropriate. Go to the next slide, Mr. Dillon. So a couple things as well. Social distance to the greatest extent possible. We've reconfigured our classrooms, moved out teacher desk. If there are multiple teacher desks in a classroom, we move that down to 1. In the front of the classroom, none of our instructors will be within 6 feet of any of the children in the classroom. We've moved out additional desks or stacked them in the back of the room in a safe manner. As I said earlier, face coverings are going to be utilized, and we're going to work out a break schedule because I don't think it's appropriate to ask any student or staff member to wear a face covering for 4 straight hours. And I went through what the start of each class will look like, and I went through that we will provide gloves as well if needed. And if we're going to ask students to wipe any of the desk surfaces, we will provide them gloves as well. So, and obviously any faculty and staff member that may request that. If you can go to the next slide. School bus. We operate a tiered bus system here, which obviously means we run multiple runs of the same bus. We are maintaining our bus routes at this point in time, and we have asked parents to notify us whether or not they're going to utilize transportation or if they wanted that waived. We're looking at additional parking accommodations where available in certain buildings, and we anticipate the last time we surveyed our parents, about 25% of them said that they will not be partaking in the bus, the utilization of the transportation department, which allows us obviously to even further disperse who's on the bus. The electrostatic sprayers will be used on every single bus between runs. So we are going to spray down every single bus after it's run. These things are, we've got a ton of these things. They look like jetpacks from the Ghostbusters movie, but they're highly effective and they're quick. So we've built in that process into our tiered runs to further sanitize our buses between potentially different groups of students on and off. So that will take place on every bus after every run. Obviously, we're going to have to redeploy our staff to make sure that we're accommodating that. So we're already working out that schedule with our transportation department, with our buildings and grounds coordinator. And then all of those disinfectants are disinfectants that are on the quote unquote good list from the EPA. So we're going to use that. And I talked about the ventilation earlier. We are increasing our capacity to flush the entire system for a 2-hour period at the end of each day, which will put us through 3 different air cycles in the building between anyone leaving the building and anyone re-entering the building. If we go to the next slide. So the schedules. There's going to be some changes in this update from what I put out on July 15th as a potential schedule, and I'll explain the reasons why we're making a shift at this point in time. So the mandate right now is that we bring students back in some capacity. Some districts are looking at that very differently. There were several districts that came out and said, we want a virtual only option. The DOE has said that that is not allowed at this point in time, that you have to bring students back. And so we were originally looking at an A-B rotation every other day. We ended up landing on what we're calling a 1-1-1-2-2, 1-1-2-2-2 rotation, right? And what that is, there's several advantages to that. One, it allows us to pod kids for a greater period of time together. Two, it allows folks that have childcare concerns to know explicitly what day their children will be attending school. Some of our high schoolers provide childcare for younger siblings. Some of them need childcare. Parents are working. Our staff has children in other districts. So it will clearly allow them to know that my child will be in school Monday, Tuesday, and every other Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday, and every other Wednesday. The rotation will be on Wednesdays. It also solves most of our scheduling difficulties with the county vocational district, of which we have about 440 students, and a number of those students are in shared time programs. It allows us to effectively schedule them under that model. It aligns us to a greater percentage of our K-8s for continuity purposes for our families. There's no way that the Freehold Regional High School District and all 7 of our K-8s could be aligned based on the different needs and configurations of each district. But this does align us to a higher percentage of those K-8 sending districts, which obviously helps not just our parents and guardians in the district, but our faculty and staff members that live within the district. The all-student remote schedule is simply if we have to close down schools and go all remote, we're prepared to do that. And as I said on the July 15th update, and as I'll reiterate again tonight, we have really focused on making our hybrid and our remote schedules as closely aligned as possible so that we could toggle between much more seamlessly, anticipating not just that we'll have to toggle between these models, but also that we are going to have families make different decisions as well. So that's the all student remote schedule. And then the full-time remote choice, if we can go to, that's if we have to close down the buildings, obviously. Go to the next slide, Mr. Dillon. The full-time remote schedule is what the governor's office allowed for on July 24th, that parents can opt into the full-time remote schedule. Again, on that August 11th communication, there will be processes for parents and guardians to do that. This obviously also allows us, we aren't creating a separate virtual academy here. We feel that the most effective way to do this is to align the hybrid and the remote schedules as closely as possible, and that will allow the most effective instructional delivery for students. Full-time remote, again, I said from the difference between the spring and the fall is much more synchronous learning. Again, I'll say it a million times. In the spring, folks pivoted, our teaching staff pivoted on a dime here, and pushed through in uncertain times with almost zero lead time on that, and we did an effective job. We truly did in this district. But we also know, based on our parent surveys and based on our feedback, that with the partial day schedules, we will be much more synchronous in the fall. The online learning, the virtual learning will certainly much more closely approximate a regular partial school day. In terms of requesting the full-time remote, we will be asking parents to provide us 5 days lead time on that if the school year is underway. We do anticipate that some families may start the year in a hybrid model if we're in hybrid, and then elect to move remote, perhaps. Once you do elect that option, you will be on remote for the marking period. So that's how we're sorting through that process. If you can go to the next slide. So here's a visual of what the hybrid schedule will look like. We're using the alpha designation, A to L and M to Z. We are literally going through every single classroom of every single section of every single discipline to look at what this looks like. It's been a mammoth undertaking that we've been engaged in for weeks now. A couple important things to note here. Are some of our special education populations, our English language learners, and our displaced and homeless students will be in the building 5 days a week. We are bringing those students back 5 days a week. We have a number of students that are not able to fully access the online learning, and we know that it's important to have some of these programs on a daily basis. And so right now, on August 5th, the plan for those certain student populations is to be in the building each day. I will say that we have educated hundreds of students in our various summer programs these past couple months. The teachers in that program have been phenomenal. The feedback in those programs has been through the roof from parents who are ecstatic. It's been much more synchronous. We're learning from those folks. They're letting us come into their classrooms and watch, which is obviously, as a classroom instructor, when 8 different administrators pop in on you to watch, it's disconcerting. So we are learning and iterating as we go. That's been a wonderful learning model from us these past couple of weeks, because we have educated, whether it's our original credit, whether it's our extended school year, whether it's our AP Summer Bridge program, hundreds of students are still in school with us presently. And I think that's important for the community to know. So this is what the hybrid schedule will look like. Again, we will move through the rotating block schedule. It will be 5 periods a day, modified periods. And it will be alternating Wednesdays. Students will be here on a partial day schedule. And I'll go through some of the specifics of the educational program with the next slide, if you can move to the next slide. So this is just so folks see the hybrid and the remote components side by side, so what that looks like. We use Google Meets here. A lot of debate around other platforms. Honestly, my faculty and staff have done a phenomenal job of familiarizing themselves with Google Meets. Our teacher coaches have worked with teachers on that, and my teachers here put a lot of time into learning Google Meets inside and out, and I'm not about to change the platform on them for the fall. So we're staying with Google Meets. I think that's important for continuity for our faculty and staff who have embraced that and know it well. I've seen some districts pivoting to other platforms. I just think that's a mistake for your faculty and staff and wholly unfair to them. A much more synchronous schedule, as I indicated, the use of live Google Meets, daily assignments, a daily attendance will be taken. Students will be expected to log in during their class period if they're home, period. Grading system, back to what is within our handbook and our district attendance policy being followed at this point in time. So the educational program is, aside from the in-person component, is exactly the same between the remote component and the hybrid component as we look to move to the fall. If we can move through to whole child and student support, we are working through with our guidance and faculty staff and faculty to ensure one-to-one contact with every single student from those various departments. So we've been working with our guidance supervisor to structure what that looks like. As I said on the last update, the 9th grade transition is what we were most fearful of if we don't open in some form of hybrid model, which is what we're planning to do today. But we have to be planned appropriately if we are not in hybrid and we're remote. And that 9th grade transition is something that we're very, very concerned about. One of the differences between the fall and back in the spring was when we went remote during the spring, our faculty and staff knew their students. They had relationships established. Working through this process is something that's driving us right now. The social and emotional learning piece to all of this is incredibly important to us. As I said, we've altered the front of our school calendar to embed some more specific training and support for our faculty and staff on that. And we're also going to embed some specific structures for our student body as we transition to the start of September in whatever that might look like. Obviously today, August 5th, preparing for hybrid, but we also have to be prepared for the remote option. In terms of making sure that our students are connected to the internet, have devices, in the spring, we had approximately 500 students that needed a device from the school district. We have approximately 1,000 students on free and reduced lunch that we provided meals for. Obviously, that hasn't changed. In fact, the need has increased for connectivity and devices. And a couple things have driven that. Obviously, if we're in a hybrid model and students are asked to bring a device to school, they may not have what they were using at home may not be appropriate to bring to school. So that increases the number of the need there. We had a significant number of students inform us that they were not connected to the internet. We are set with hotspots across the district at this point in time. We've worked with the cable providers. That's ready to go. We will not have a single student open September that we're aware of not connected to the internet. When I look across the landscape and see the digital divide and months of kids being disconnected, I can't for the life of me understand why that can't be solved. It took us a couple days to solve it. We've worked diligently there. We've utilized, there has been some additional funding specific to connecting students that we deployed to purchase more Chromebooks, obviously anticipating an increased need. So we're going to continue to work through that. In terms of anticipating the need for additional counseling, working with families, the longer that this closure, and I use that term loosely in some areas with what I see on the news, extends, we know that the more folks are impacted with their jobs, we expect increases in unemployment in our school community, in food scarcity in our school community, and in lacking access to some basic needs. So we are anticipating that for September. We're working with our counseling department presently to plan for that. And we have front loaded the opening part of our school year for our faculty and staff to focus on those specific needs. If you can go to the next slide, that details that in some more specifics. We have to take care of our faculty and staff and our students when they come back to us, right? Like, this has been a difficult time for everybody. I think we are fooling ourselves if we don't acknowledge that, and if we don't alter some of our traditional practices to embrace that need, to make sure that we are providing our students and our faculty and staff the support that they need to do all this work effectively as we look to open in a hybrid schedule in September. Obviously, that work becomes even more difficult if we're in the remote environment. And so we will continue to fine-tune those plans over the next 5 weeks. I can assure the community here that there's been a lot of canceled vacations, and we're going to continue to work through this as much as we need to prior to September to make sure that we get it right. A lot of folks asking, if you can go to the next slide, about extracurriculars, fall sports, clubs, band. A bit of a holding pattern right now. The fall sports, Maryland was the first state in the country to cancel fall sports, high school sports, I'm speaking specifically. That happened this week. New Jersey currently is in a phased model. They're in phase 2 of that phase for fall sports. And so we have had our student athletes practicing in highly structured environments since July 20th. That has gone very well. We control that. I've had a number of community members ask me about captain's practices and things like that. And the simple answer to that is we don't condone any of that. The last thing we want are kids congregating on their own, unsupervised, to do anything at this point in time. We want to supervise it with structure. Presently, the fall sports season is set to open on September 14th. They're looking at modified schedules. There are a lot of proposals out there for what may happen with athletics in particular next school year. No answers at this point in time. We'll continue to work through the phased model. As far as extracurriculars like band and clubs and the such, whether we're in hybrid or remote, we're hoping to be able to run all of that. We're going to work through each of those individual activities, extracurricular activities and clubs, and make sure that we can do that to the best of our ability. If something is unable to be run for a specific reason, then it will be an anomaly from what we're trying to do overall for our students. We know that the academics are obviously most important for our students, but we also know that all that other stuff that is high school for kids is incredibly important. Whether that's a club, whether that's a sport, whether that's another activity, we want to be able to provide those opportunities for our students as much as possible. I should say there are a lot of buts to this, right? The governor will make a budget address on August 25th. He has been very clear that if the state doesn't receive federal money, or if his plan to borrow, I think it's $9.8 billion, is not supported, that we will be looking at potential further reductions in our budgets. I don't know what will or won't happen. This is one of the unknowns. The difficulty for us as a school system is that our budget was struck in July. And so to be altered mid-budget, mid-school budget year is incredibly difficult for us. And there's a lot of unknowns that we will not know fully until after that budget address on August 25th. And then I think the final budget isn't due to be struck until September 30th. So we're obviously already into the school year at that point in time. I think it's unrealistic for school districts not to be honest about the possibility of furloughs, the possibility about reductions, and what that might look like in the fall if those budgets are further slashed. It's a very difficult position to be in because there are so many unknowns at this point in time. I can say that this is August 5th again. I'll go back to that. On August 10th, the board will approve the formal plan. On August 11th, the plan will go to the county office, and the communications explaining all of what I've just gone through in this presentation and update will be shared with the larger school community. And folks will be asked, and parents and guardians will be asked to make a decision about remote learning. We do know at this point in time, our faculty and staff, somewhere around 90%, say that they're returning, but I also know that that is subject to change. Folks are waiting on the schedules of their own children. Folks with medical issues are concerned, and we expect that the request for leaves will increase before the school year opens once the final plan is struck and out there. And I think that that's going to be something for school systems to really grapple with. It's going to be a difficult reality that I think we all have to own. And when you have 600 different school districts, moving forward with 600 different districts, I will give the community an example of what my household will look like in September. I have 4 children. 3 of them will be on one schedule, 2 days a week. My 4th child will be on an every other week schedule. My wife will be on a 5-day-a-week schedule, and I'll be on our Friol Regional High School District schedule. So that's 4 different schedules within my own class, my own household. And managing that is incredibly difficult. And I know that a number of our faculty and staff are going to be in very similar positions and have to make some very difficult decisions. And I want to express my empathy about that, because I think that a more consistent plan from the state could have alleviated some of that. But we haven't received that. And so we're going to do the best that we can do at this point in time with what we know. And again, all of this is subject to change. And so I plan on doing another update and getting this group back together prior to opening, because I'm sure things may shift between now and September 12th, September 10th. I know that there's a lot of things that we don't know presently. I know that there's an awful lot of pressure being placed upon the governor to go fully remote. And I know that right now the mandate that we're living within is to open our schools for children. And so we're working through that. I think this district, the way it does everything, is incredibly thorough, incredibly open, and no detail is too small. And that's how we're approaching reopening. I feel confident that we will do it safely. I feel confident that we will, whatever is required of us, we will not only meet, but exceed in terms of expectations around our school community members. And whether the mandate remains to open with students or is changed in some way, we will meet that head on and well, frankly. You know, I want to thank my team again. They are literally here at all hours of the day, just working through this. We work through documents of questions from faculty and staff, questions from school community members. Anybody that has emailed me a question has received a response. If they've made a phone call, they've received a phone call back in the community. Literally no single question in this community of 200,000 is going unanswered. And there's a lot of folks behind the scenes really making that happen, who are allowing us to continue to move forward. I don't know what September looks like. I do believe that we are being driven towards a remote opening. I do believe that. And I think that a number of us are calling that out in different venues about what that looks like. I think that a lack of courageous leadership under the guise of flexibility is dangerous. And we're navigating that right now. We plan on opening hybrid as of today, August 5th. And we'll see where the state goes with this over the next several weeks. And then obviously what the COVID status itself looks like in our communities, and where we go with it. So I know there's an awful lot of information dumped into the chat room. I know there's an awful lot of questions. We will get those answers to anything that was put in there. This video will go out to the larger community probably tomorrow, maybe Friday, but by Friday at the latest. And then we expect to receive a number of questions as we continue to move forward. I want to thank there's 78 folks on this call right now who've taking time over the summer to participate in this. Your feedback is important. Your questions that you're posing in the chat room and the questions that you follow up with us are incredibly important to us and deserve answers. And so we'll make sure that we do that prior to school opening, and we'll continue to move forward in the way that we have. So I want to thank everyone for their time. Don't hesitate to reach out, and we will provide more specific answers to what I just went through. But I can tell you, I do believe that the state is being pushed towards a remote opening. That's not where we are as a district as per the mandates on August 5th. So Thank you, everyone, for your time.